Okay, let's take a look at graphing an equation with a table of values. In the last section, we saw plotting points on a graph. Now let's take a look at a nice simple equation like y equals x. What does that mean? Well, it means y equals x the whole time. A equals b, y equals x. I like chocolate. All similar things that we want to start thinking about. Something is equal to something else. Something is equal to more than something else. Something is equal to less than something else, etc. So right now, y is equal to x. I'm always going to start with a table of values. So I'm going to say x and y. Excuse me, I'm going to use my graph paper appropriately. So we can say x and y like we learned in the last section. And then we're going to just choose some values. So I like to choose -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Extend my table down a little bit. Now, you may be wondering why we chose these numbers. Well, we're just choosing these numbers arbitrarily. And in the future, we're going to be choosing numbers more specifically. But until we fully understand, we just want to think, I don't know how to graph this thing. I'm going to graph it with the table of values. So I'm going to draw a graph off to the right. So we have a graph. I could have pasted one like I did last time, but typically that. You want arrow tips on all the corners with full marks to show that it goes in every direction. Positive is x. Positive to the right, x. Up and down is y. And now what I'm going to do for the beginning is write the equation again down below, y equals x. Now, I've chosen some x values, so I'm going to substitute into the equation. Well, I'm going to start off with my first x value of -2. I'm going to properly substitute that into the equation. So I don't know what y is, so y equals. Now, x, the first x value in my table is -2. I'm going to now substitute that number in for x, -2. And I'm using a new method, so I'm going to write that method down. Substitute. It's also on your yearly review, obviously, but I'm going to write that method down. I'm going to put a box around it. I'm going to start to see. So another method, table of values, TOV. I'm going to write that down off to the right. TOV, a table of values. Then in the future, when I'm stuck, instead of going and asking the teacher, asking for help, I'm going to go back to my notes and I'm going to go, why was this so difficult for me to remember? Oh yeah, all I did was a table of values and I used substitute, the method. It's going to get a lot simpler when we start looking at math like a toolbox. These are the things that I know how to do. How can I apply them rather than I should just know what to do? So these brackets are unnecessary. Y equals -2. I'm going to circle my answer, and then I'm going to put -2 in the table above. Below y, next to the -2. When x was -2, y is also -2 because the equation above is y equals x. Let's do one more. Y equals x. Now the next value of x that I'm going to substitute is -1. So again, I'm going to substitute -1. Now you may be wondering why I put brackets around these things, because the answer is just the same thing without those brackets, y equals -1. Circle my answer, put it in the table. The reason why I do that, and in the notes off to the right, I'm going to put brackets around the word substitute to remember to always substitute with brackets. In the future, when you start to understand when you don't need the brackets, the unnecessary brackets, you can start to use them less. But it's good to start practicing properly so then it's almost muscle memory in the future. So now, as you can see in the notes, I should have been plotting those points as I went. So my first point, I'm going to put beside the table, -2, -2. I'm not going to do that again, but I'm going to go negative on the x. XY. I'm going to put that above to not confuse me. My x value is -2. I'm going to go 2 to the left. And then my y value is -2. I'm going to go 2 down. Then I'm also going to put that point on, -2, -2, labeling all my points until I'm very comfortable with this stuff. The second point I found was -1, -1. I'm not going to write the point again off to the right of the table. I'm just going to put it on the graph. So we have an x value of -1, so we're going to go in the x, the horizontal, left 1. I'm going to hover my pencil there. Then I'm going to go down 1. I'm going to write that point down, -1, -1. Now, as you can see in the notes, I continued to do this. I'm just going to read you the English instructions for the proper substitution. Write down the formula. Substitute the x value or whichever value into the formula. Make sure you substitute with brackets. Then find out what the value is, put the y value into the table, write the point on the graph, make sure you label the point. And now I'm just going to continue. So down the page in the table, x is 0, y is then 0. X is 1, y is then 1. X is 2, y is then 2. Putting all those points on the graph, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 2. Then, as you can see in the steps, I'm going to draw a line through it with a ruler. I can't use a ruler because the digital touch gets messed up, but use a ruler always when drawing your graph, when drawing your lines, etc. And make sure you put those arrow tips on the edge of the graph and on the edge of the line, or the curve, we like to call it sometimes. Okay, at the bottom of the page, let's take a look at another example. I'm going to put a line below it. Shouldn't take you this much space or near it. Y equals x plus 1. This time I'm going to be really lazy and put a graph on the page. No, I'm not. I'm going to draw it for you just to show you some things. So when we draw the graph and put arrow tips on all edges, and then put an x and a y axis, your teachers will less likely take marks off for those things, not writing all these things in higher level grades, but sometimes they're sticklers. So we have a graph off to the right, and what I should have done on the graph above is put a single tick on one of my graph paper squares and put a 1. And a single tick on my y-axis and put a 1. Then I already know that each one is one tick. If you're not using graph paper, you'll probably want to write more ticks, or you might want to write all the ticks, however you feel comfortable. So again, let's do this equation, y equals x plus 1. Let's make a table of values. You guessed it, x and y. Let's do the same numbers we did before, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And as I said before, I hope you are not writing as gigantic as I am. You should be using your graph paper lines perfectly, but I'm going to need to squeeze my notes up on occasion. So again, I'm going to write the equation down every time. Not look up to it, think about substitute into it, write it down every time. Then substitute. So my first value in the table is -2. I'm looking for y. Y equals, I'm going to substitute with brackets, -2 plus 1. These are actually unnecessary brackets because there's no positives or negatives in front of it, actually only negatives, but there's nothing in front of it, so I can literally get rid of those brackets. I'm going to scribble them out to see in my notes that I put them there for the thought to get better practice for future, but then recognize they're unnecessary, and that's why they're scribbled out. Now, -2 plus 1. Well, we learned from the number line that we add and subtract on the number line, so we're going to start at -2. Then we're going to go to the right one, which is +1. So y equals -1. Then I'm going to put that point in the table, -1. One time I'm going to write the point down, -2, -1. I'm going to say x, y directly above it, even though it's perfectly to the left in the table, etc. Now, I'm going to put that point on the graph. My y-axis tick got messed up. It shouldn't for you, because you should be using graph paper properly, and I'm going to put the 1 back. Okay, so 2, -2 on the left, so -2 on the x, and then down 1. Again, I'm going to label that point. You don't have to do this middle part and label the point. Oh, I forgot to circle my answer down below, y equals -1. So substitute with brackets. Put the first value of the x value in, -2. -2 plus 1 is -1. Put that value in the table. Possibly write that point off to the right if that helps. And then put the point on the graph, -2, -1. If it helps, write -1 and -2 on the graph, maybe -3, etc. So again, let's do substitution. So y equals x plus 1. The next value in the table for x is -1. I'm going to substitute with brackets. Again, those are unnecessary brackets. This time I'm just not going to scribble them out because I don't care. And -1 plus 1 is 0. Y equals 0. Circle my answer. Put the answer in the table next to the -1. We have the point -1, 0. Where's that? Well, we're on the x, the horizontal axis. We're going left 1 for -1 for x. And then y is 0, not going up or down. I'm going to put that point right there. And then notice I'm kind of running into space issues. This is going to happen. You're going to start to learn where to put writing, where to put stuff, make yourself, whichever. Above, below, etc. Maybe erase a part, maybe just put it, whichever. I'm just going to squeeze it in. So we get -2, 0. So now, as you can see in the notes, it says, or do it in your head. So now I'm just going to fill in the rest of the table in my head. The equation is y equals x plus 1. The x value is 0. Substituting the value for 0 in for x says now y equals 0 plus 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. The next x value, 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. The next value is 2 for x. 2 plus 1 is 3. Whoops, I should have been putting those points on the graph as I was going. 0, 1, label the point, 0, 1. 1, 2, label the point, 1, 2. 2, 3, label the point, 2, 3. Put a line through it. Obviously not always going to be a line. We're going to work with all sorts of shapes. Whatnot in the future, we're just going to start by graphing linear equations. So in the last section, we just plotted random points from a table or random given points. Now we're actually given the equation. We make our table with the method substitution. I'm going to put a big blue box around it. Substitution with brackets. So the methods that we learned are plotting points, graphing with a table of values, and substitution. Let's now take a look at a couple more equations.